Ready to forget? Oh, jeez.
Today we're going to tell you the storyline of a movie called Bloodshot from the year 2020. The movie tells us a story about an elite soldier who was resurrected with a high-tech nanotechnology and given him a superhuman ability. But as he sets out for revenge, he uncovers a shocking truth about his life. So, instead of piling your curiosity, let's get straight to the video. But before we start, please support our channel by subscribing and click the bell icon for future notifications. Now, let's start. The movie started with a raid on a house with a hostage inside, led by a lieutenant named Ray Garrison, where Ray managed to breach the door and killed the terrorists inside. Until he went inside a room the hostage was in, where he was cornered and decided to lower his gun.
Take it easy. What do you want?
But then he talked to the terrorist and made him off guard, and right then, Ray finished the terrorist off. After he finished his mission, Ray went back to the Aviano Air Base, where Gina, his wife, awaits him. They then went for a walk around the harbor to let go of their longing, and decided to spend the night in a motel for one round of a wrestling game.
Nice.
Long story short, when the sun had risen, Gina was already gone to get breakfast for them, but then it appears that there were two unknown people who sneaked into Ray's room and suddenly attacked him. But then unfortunately they were no match to Ray, where Ray managed to defeat them quite easily. When Ray went outside the room to look for his wife, he accidentally bumped into a man who looked like a tourist, but then right after that, Ray suddenly staggered and helplessly fell down on the floor. And it turns out that it was all the tourist look-alike man act he bumped into, who turns out to be with the unknowns who attacked him. Ray was then tied in a chair inside a meat storage by Martin, the guy who sedated him. And it turns out that Martin was the leader of the terrorists Ray had massacred in the beginning of the movie. Martin then asked Ray where he got the information about the hostage-taking, but he already knew that Ray would never say a thing, so that he captured Ray's wife and tied her right in front of him to threaten him to open his mouth. But Ray still couldn't say anything, because apparently he had no idea about what Martin asked him.
Could Gene handle all 6 inches?
But even so, Martin still decided to kill Gina there. And because Ray was no longer useful to him, Martin then decided to shoot Ray in the head. Long story short, Ray was awakened in a facility named Rising Spirit Technologies, or RST. Soon after, two people suddenly approached him. It was Dr. Emile, the leader in the facility, and KT, his colleague. In fact, it turns out that Ray was dead in the meat storage incident, and the military had donated his body to the RST facility because none of his family had claimed his body. And it turns out that RST had used Ray's body as a test subject of an experiment called Bloodshot, and they succeeded, proven by Ray's resurrection. But sadly, he has to lose all of his past memories. Here we know that RST is a tech company that focuses on improving the military combat power, especially for the soldiers, where they are developed to be more agile than ever, and of course, Ray took part in the experiment, where he was not only resurrected, but also embedded with millions of nanobots called nanite all over his body, which was used to increase his physical power. Moreover, the fast nanite's response made his recovery go so quick and made any injuries recover in no time. But it doesn't mean that the tech comes with no flaws. The nanites also need energy for it to work, so that the more injury he gets, the more energy it needs to consume. Besides Ray, it turns out there were also other ex-soldiers who became the RST test subjects. And one of them is KT. She was a former US Navy swimmer and was a victim of a chemical gas attack in Syria that destroyed her respiratory system. And she got a cybernetic respiratory system which made her immune to any inhalants and was able to breathe underwater. There was also an ex-Special Force soldier named Tibbs who lost his vision from a mortar attack and was replaced with an ocular prosthetic that was connected to camera arrays on his chest. And lastly, Jimmy, a former Navy SEAL who had lost his legs during a mission and were replaced by prosthetic legs that made him way more agile than he was ever before. When the night came, Ray was suddenly awakened by a nightmare, and in that dream there were some visions from his past that were stuck in his head. Soon after, Ray decided to train his body in the gym, and with his new superhuman power, he even punched a hole in a punching bag in one hit, and later used a concrete pillar as his punching bag. And not only that, he even able to lift a ridiculous amount of weight with his hands. And it turns out that he was not alone. There was also KT, who had just finished her swimming routine. Soon after, Ray invited her for a drink. But then in the middle of their talk, Ray suddenly was flashed with all of the memories of the meat storage incident, where his wife was murdered by Martin, and it made him went mad.
Listen.
Without wasting any more time, he then rushes to find Martin. Knowing that, Dr. Emile then tried to stop him, but their Ray was already driven by his grudge and anger and ignored Dr. Emile's words. It turns out, with help of the extremely high-tech nanites in him, he was able to access the entire world's database, including the Interpol's secret network, where he managed to find Martin information, who was currently staying in Hungary. Ray needs to use a plane to get there, and as quick as it is, he also managed to learn how to fly a plane from a manual guide he found on the internet. Meanwhile, Martin, who was in danger, seems to already know that Ray was after him and was guarded by fully armed guards inside a bulletproof car. Until when they entered a tunnel, they were startled by the tunnel's lights that went off so suddenly. And right then they were greeted by a truck that crashed into one of the frontline cars and made the truck block the tunnel. Soon, the whole tunnel then was covered with flower clouds from the truck, which then Martin's guards combed the area just to find that the truck driver was gone. And at the same time, Ray suddenly appeared from behind the clouds and defeated all the guards there, quite easily.
That's not good.
And after he managed to eliminate all the guards, there was only Martin left, and Ray was finally able to kill him, with the same way Martin did to him.
Making a mistake.
After he finished his revenge mission, he then immediately went to a runway, where KT and the others were already waiting. And it turns out his fight has drained most of the nanite's energy, so that it requires him to recharge the nanite's energy. And right above him, there was a room where Dr. Emile works. And the most shocking part is that it turns out that Ray's memories were all fake. Where all his past life is all computer-generated simulations, and in other words, his love story with Gina were all just lies. Along with Martin, where he had never killed Gina, and all this was actually planned by none other than Dr. Emile. He made all those plans to kill his former colleagues who betrayed him, and it also turns out there were already 4 people, including Martin, that he eliminated. And his next target is a bearded man named Nick Barres. There, Dr. Emile once again manipulated Ray's memory and replaced Martin's face with Barres, so that Ray would think that Barres is the one who killed him and his wife. And after all of the preparations are ready, they just need to act as before and follow the storyline when Ray was just resurrected. Until they met the same condition where Ray planned his revenge and Ray was already at Barres' place, where he faked his death to be able to enter the house. But then it would be a different situation than before, because Barres has an ace for the case. An IT guy named Wilfred Wiggins, a reliable hacker with a top-of-the-top hacking ability. There he shows Barres his EMP device, which was capable of transmitting high electromagnetic pulses that could easily terminate every electric device in its area, including Ray's nanobots. But the thing is, it needs some time to activate. At the same time, Ray finally got up and defeated all of Barres' guards. And he finally reached the room Barres was in no time, where unfortunately his EMP device was still not ready yet, until he faced upon Ray, and was so helplessly shot dead by him. And soon after that, someone suddenly activated the EMP device and terminated every electric device there, including Ray's, and made all the people at RST, including Dr. Emile, panicked.
I have nothing.
After the attack, Ray was awakened by a guy who turns out to be Wiggins, the same guy who activated the EMP device. And it turns out that he was not one of Barres' men, but just a coerced mercenary, and Ray's arrival there was actually a part of his escape plan. Shortly after, Ray suddenly remembered about his and his wife's murder memory. But the odd thing was that the murderer's face was repeatedly changing. And there, Wiggins told him about Dr. Emil's colleague's betrayal, where Martin, Boris, and the other 3 men formerly worked with Dr. Emil at RST.
What you think is real, sometimes ain't.
And here Ray finally realized that he was used as a revenge tool the whole time, where Dr. Emil manipulated his memory over and over again. One last thing left Ray hanging was the existence of Gina, his wife. And Ray needs to directly meet her to find the answer. There he also asked Wiggins to find a way to hack the nanobot system inside him, considering that Wiggins is a genius hacker, so that Dr. Emil would no longer be able to track him. Ray even was required to drive an old car with no electronics inside. But then it turns out that the people at RST were still able to track him through images from their satellites. They then immediately called Jimmy and Tibbs to capture Ray.
Well, we gotta use all this shit.
Long story short, Ray finally arrived at Gina's house, where it turns out that Gina was alive and still remembers Ray as well. But then Ray had to be heartbroken by the fact that Gina was already married and was blessed with 2 children. He is physically invincible, but from a heartbreak? Nope. Sad Ray then decided to leave, but then suddenly he was hit by Tibbs and Jimmy, and his car was crushed. But fortunately, he managed to survive and tried to escape the scene immediately. Tibbs then shoots his trackers up in the skies and connects his visions to it. Meanwhile, Jimmy was still chasing after Ray. Ray even crushed some walls to widen his distance from Jimmy. But it was useless, because with Tibbs' guidance, Jimmy managed to find Ray quite easily. Until Ray was stopped by Jimmy in a junction, but then unexpectedly they were hit so hard by a truck out of nowhere, and it destroyed Jimmy's legs. And Ray, who was still okay, then approached Jimmy, but then suddenly, Tibbs appeared and stabbed a device to Ray's back, which was used to send a signal to the RST HQ to make them able to forcefully deactivate Ray's nanites. Soon after, Dr. Emil ordered KT to find and kill Wiggins, because he knew too much about their secret. But then KT looked fed up and decided to refuse the order. Hearing that, Dr. Emil then deactivated KT's rebreather right away, made her out of breath, and left her with no choice but to obey.
Good girl.
Long story short, KT finally arrived at Wiggins' place that night. There were also some guards Wiggins paid to guard him.
Allow me, Wiggins.
But sadly, they were no match against KT, and after she sedated Wiggins, she then defeated all the guards there fairly easily. And after the mission, KT went back to the RST HQ, but then she faked her report and said that Wiggins managed to escape, whereas she did successfully capture him. Sounds like a hidden plan. Moving on.
Again?
Hearing her report, Dr. Emil then decided to use Ray again to hunt Wiggins down. There once again he manipulated Ray's memory and replaced Barry's face with Wiggins. But then without them knowing, KT managed to enter the neural space room and messed up the simulation.
I should have done a long time.
Really, why is that? Why is this happening?
Someone's altering the...
KT.
It also turns out that KT was working with Wiggins and granted him the access to the RST control center. Thus he managed to take over the whole system and freed Ray.
Oh, jeez.
There he also managed to bypass Dr. Emil's remote access from KT's rebreather so that KT was no longer under his control. Meanwhile, Jimmy and Tibbs were seen preparing themselves with high-tech gadgets and robotic arms for the fight.
The 74th floor.
Back with KT, when she entered the RST server room and exploded the whole place along with all the data there. Meanwhile, Ray, who was looking for Dr. Emil, suddenly stopped by fully armed Jimmy that led them into a fierce fight that even threw them down to a moving elevator top. And at the same time, Tibbs suddenly joined the fight and overwhelmed Ray.
Dropping it!
Until at one point they managed to throw Ray down, but fortunately Ray landed on another moving elevator. And when Jimmy was after him, Ray suddenly jumped at him, but then Jimmy managed to get rid of him and made him fall near Tibbs. It heavily damaged the elevator they're on and nearly knocked them off of it. But instead of helping, Jimmy then let Tibbs fall off the elevator to his death. But their Ray was still persistent to defeat Jimmy, and with all his might, he ran off the elevator and grabbed Jimmy to fall down together. And then he concentrated all his strength in his fist and one-punched Jimmy to his forever sleep. And because of that fight, Ray nearly drains all of the Nanite's energy, and he would be dead if he received one other heavy injury. Meanwhile, when Dr. Emil was about to run away, Ray then immediately stopped him from behind. And their Dr. Emil immediately grabbed his grenades launcher from his car trunk, shot Ray, and destroyed him with it. And right when Ray regenerates himself, Dr. Emil then shoots him one more time. But then unexpectedly, the Nanites manage to peel off the projectile until only its core left, which drains all of the Nanite's energy. And here Dr. Emil finally dared to face Ray, but then unexpectedly, Ray then surprised Dr. Emil with the projectile's core in his hand. Then he dropped it and exploded themselves there. And once again, it seems like Ray still keeps his lucky charm in his pocket, because somehow Wiggins managed to resurrect him again with his whole memory still intact.
Good to see you.
There was also KT outside the van watching the sunsets.
He's awake.
Thank you.
And the movie ends.
Perfect.
What do you think of this movie? Drop your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to support the channel by leaving a thumb up, or even better, a subscribe and a bell ring so that you would never miss our future recaps. And if you have any movie you want us to recap, please do tell us in the comments section as well. And until next time.